各位亲爱的朋友们，以及各位新加坡同胞们，我的华语不会很流利。我在求学的时候，华语是我的第二语文。That's a surprise. 因为在1972年那时候，我的小学没有开办淡米尔文的第二语文。我的父母认为学华语对我比较有用，他们一点也没有做。很多人知道我是一名医生，也是国大的教授。我的生活比较宽裕，而且我也享受我和妻子一起的生活，和家人一起的生活。可是我在工作上遇到很多不公道的事情。我看见在医院里有许多病人无法应付他们的医疗费，特别是那些老年人，他们并不想依靠政府，或者是成为他们子女的负担，因为这样拖延了许多应该做的手术，或者很重要的治疗。我想不同的机构提出反馈，可是他们的回应通常是很客气的，却没有带来积极的结果。因此我决定中正。2010年的时候，我做新加坡民主党的职工，也在2011年在破砖码头的新加坡民主党金钟大会发言过。那次的发言引起了很多医生和我的朋友的关注，很多人以为我因此被招鱿鱼。家相反的是，我在2013年身为国大的全职教授，那让我放下心中的大石，因为这告诉我，新加坡的政治已经改变了很多。有人问我为什么参加新加坡民主党？答案是很简单，民主党是唯一拥有明确政治理念的政党。我们相信一个公正和平等的民主国家。这些价值观对我来说是很重要的。我认为，只要民主党走入国会，我们就可以为新加坡公民所关心的问题提起来，如医疗保健、住屋、教育、人口，以及最重要的是替你们拿回你们的公积金，好不好？接下来我用英语。Okay, friends, fellow Singaporeans, I did that because I had one of my patients' sons who has been coming to our rallies for the last few days, and he said to me, "You have to speak in Mandarin." I said, "I haven't spoken in Mandarin in public for more than 30 years since I was in school, and I'm really shy about it." He said, "Never mind, you practice. You get someone to help you, you get your wife to help you," and she did. She helped me go through it and make the thing a little bit simpler. I hope you understood what I said. Anyway, for those of you who don't understand Mandarin, what I said was I'd become involved in politics because I was concerned about patients I encountered every day in the hospital who these are older people who cannot afford the healthcare costs in Singapore. Singapore has very good healthcare. The problem is it's very expensive. And many older Singaporeans, they don't want to beg. They find the healthcare assistance schemes very complicated. There's the CHESS Blue Card, Orange Card, Pioneer Generation Card, Medifund, all those other schemes which are very, very complicated. I had given feedback to many government unions, but I only got polite replies. And it wasn't until 2011 when I decided to actually come out and speak at the SDP rally at Boat Quay that I really got more involved in politics in itself. Many people were afraid that I would lose my job, but instead of which I got promoted in 2013. And this was very reassuring to me because it shows that there's nothing to fear anymore in Singapore. We can make our voices heard. You can vote on Friday with confidence. Your vote is secret. Nobody knows how you voted. You have the power within you. As I said the other day, in a democratic society, the people should not be afraid of the government. The government should be afraid of the people. Okay, first of all this evening, I'd like to talk about the topic of immigration. I understand that there are many in this constituency who are new citizens. And I want to be very clear about this. The SDP is not against immigration. We believe that carefully calibrated immigration can enrich the diversity of Singapore's commercial, cultural, and civic life. We do believe, however, the infrastructure has to be prepared for the immigration. You don't bring in 1 million people without upgrading the roads, the trains, the hospitals, the facilities, and the resources. We've had a massive increase in population without being prepared for this. The SDP supports also a minimum wage for everybody, Singaporeans and foreigners alike. This will stop the exploitation of the migrant workers who build our homes, clean our roads, build our schools, and do all the jobs that we don't want to do. They deserve better. Don't you agree? At the same time, a minimum wage will prevent our local workers from losing their jobs to people who are willing to work for less because they can go back in another country where the currency is not so strong. So the SDP is for quality immigration, which protects the rights of immigrants as much as it protects the local population. My own grandfather came over in 1911 from a small village in India in response to an ad looking for someone with an O-level cert to become the principal of ACS in Penang. He came down to Singapore, got a degree, went on to get a PhD, and served the country with distinction. Many of your parents and grandparents have migrated from India and China. They have come to join the local Malay population to make Singapore what it is today, a rich, diverse society made up of people who have a stake in this country. Immigrants who have come to be part of the Singapore family, to live with us, to serve NS with us, are most welcome. Don't you agree? And my message to the new immigrants is this. Although you might feel grateful to the PAP for getting your citizenship, never forget, Singapore is more than the PAP. This country was built by all the people of Singapore, including those described by our first speaker, Mr. Tan Kok Fang, people who sacrificed, who spent time in detention or banishment to fight for freedom and independence for Singapore. In order to make Singapore a great country, we need to have multiple different voices. We need to have a vibrant democracy. In fact, the best policies of the PAP came out in the 1960s when we had housing, widespread public housing, when we had healthcare that went out to the villages and kampongs and was provided free of charge, when the Jurong Town Council was established, which transformed the neighborhoods around here. All of these policies were put in place by the PAP which had a very strong opposition that was keeping them on their toes. We are the beneficiaries of many of these policies. Unfortunately, as Mr. Sada pointed out, the PAP of today is not like the PAP of yesterday. Many of those policies have been watered down over the years. For example, after 1984, there's no more pensions except for the very elite ministers. There were no more public hospitals. All the public hospitals were restructured. In order to bring the PAP back to its original role as a democratic socialist party that cares for the people of Singapore, you need a good, strong opposition in Parliament. That's us. When we do our walkabouts, one of the most important issues that we are asked about is the cost of living. People are squeezed at both ends. And that's not just those who are sick. People have to pay the high costs of childcare for their children. They have to pay high costs to send their children to tuition centers. And the reason why they have to go to tuition centers is because classes are too big. Every class has 30 or 40 students. The senior classes mostly have 40 students. Teachers are burdened with heavy administrative responsibilities. So children don't get the attention that they need. And as a result, many feel the need for tuition. When I was in school, hardly anybody had private tuition. I had Chinese tuition because nobody at home could speak Chinese. A lot of people had maths tuition, but that's about it. But now you have children going for tuition so that they can do the tuition homework. That's ridiculous to me. We need an alternative look at education. We need the SDP's education policy, which has a holistic approach to education, tries to develop the whole child, and doesn't rely on standardized tests like the PSLE. The second issue is always about costs. People ask this question, why are the costs in Singapore so high? Why is Singapore among the most expensive cities in the world? The Singapore dollar is very strong. You go to Malaysia, now $1 can buy 3 ringgit. We import most of our products from Malaysia and China, and the currencies of both those countries have been devalued. But why are things so expensive? When we ask business owners, the answer invariably is the same. It's the rental. And why is the rental so high? Because the rental incorporates the cost of land. Now, this doesn't make sense. Most of the land in Singapore was acquired by the government at very low cost. According to the book Hard Choices, edited by Donald Low and Sudhir Vadaketh, state ownership of land went from 26% in 1968 to 75% in 1985. So that's amazing. Let me say that again. In 1968, when there was, soon after the last opposition Barisan Socialist MPs left Parliament, the state of Singapore only owned 25% of the land. In 1985, the year after Chiam See Tong and JB Jeyaretnam were elected, the state owned 75% of the land. And most of the land was acquired really cheap. They would pay $1 for an acre. So, we wouldn't really object if the land was acquired by the government and used for schools or for hospitals or some other community services. But what really gets us annoyed is when land is acquired from farmers and is used to build these mega malls, which are then rented out to small business owners at very high rental rates. This is something which is clearly wrong. The transition to REITs, or real estate investment trusts, who have to generate revenues for shareholders, has worsened the problem further. The SDP's economic plan calls for eliminating land costs as a factor in calculating rental or housing prices. This should significantly drive down prices, and any retailers found to be profiteering will be taken to task by a case, but not the case that we have now, a consumer association which really has teeth, so they can stand up for you, and if they don't, SDP will stand up for you in Parliament. As you can see, the SDP has a strong suite of alternative policies to address the important issues facing Singaporeans today. We only have 11 candidates in this election, so we can't form the government this time. But we can promise you that if we are elected, we will ask good questions in Parliament and we will benchmark the PAP policies against international best practices. That is what we have done for the various SDP policies. These are carefully thought out policies. They've been presented to the public. They've been debated and discussed. One person who is certainly not afraid to ask good questions is my colleague, Mr. Sada. As you've heard, Sada was a candidate for the Sembawang GRC team in the 2011 elections, and that was the team that was the most improved of any constituency. He was a teacher for many years and a unionist. He worked with Dr. Tan Chen Bok, and he has a really good feel for the ground. I was amazed at how he's been walking the blocks of Bukit Batok, even though this is a new constituency which was just carved out. He's really got his heart on the ground for the people. He and the rest of the 11 SDP candidates can be a check on the PAP government. We can hold them accountable to you, the people of Singapore. Because remember, you are not voting for the master of the people. You are voting for someone to be a servant of the people. The SDP will ask good questions about issues that matter to us Singaporeans. The cost of living, healthcare, housing, education, population, and the CPF. Vote for us on Friday. Make us your voice in Parliament. Thank you. Terima kasih. Sia sia. Nandri.